We are now into the month of October, which means we are right into the thick of allocation season. This year has already brought us some amazing new bourbon and whiskey releases, and this month has some more of those heavy hitters, but also a few more affordable options that won't break the bank or break your wallet. In this video, I've hand-selected 10 different bourbons and whiskeys that you should be keeping on your bourbon hunting radar throughout the month of October. So sit back, relax, pour up something good, and let's jump into the list. Welcome in, everybody. My name is Brandon Spinner, the Whiskey Weatherman, and you've stormed yourself into the one YouTube channel where it is always whiskey weather. Now, before we jump into the October list, I did the exact same exercise in the month of September with 15 new bottles to be keeping an eye out for as you head out to the liquor store. Now, I want to know, were you able to find any of those 15, or what was your best find in the month of September? Drop those in the comments section below, and let's jump on into the October list. Now, I'm going to start with the most affordable, going to the most expensive on my list from 1 to 10. And coming in at number 1 is one of the most affordable bottles, or at least new affordable releases that I think I've seen so far here in 2025. And that is the O.H. Ingram Uncharted Bourbon. Now, this is a 92 proof, 4-year-old bourbon that has an MSRP right at $40. And if you don't know much about O.H. Ingram, they are a distillery in the western side of Kentucky, right on the Mississippi River, and you may call it a gimmick, but they are aging all of their whiskey on a barge in the Mississippi River. I believe it is 2 stories high. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what I read. I do love the aspect that this is being aged on a barge in the Mississippi River Valley. While you may call it gimmicky, to me, I think it's pretty cool because of the entirely different climate that you're going to get from the Mississippi River Valley, and the weather nerd that I am, I think that that's kind of cool and not quite as gimmicky as you might think. Now, this bourbon is contract distilled from the folks over at Green River Distilling Company, and it's a blend of 4 to 6-year-old bourbons with a supposed mash bill of 70% corn, 21% wheat, and 9% malted barley. So this is going to be more of an affordable wheater out on the market. So if that is your type of profile, if you like some wheated bourbons, this is going to be one that you probably want to keep an eye out for as you go out towards the liquor store here for the next couple of months. As I was pretty impressed by O.H. Ingram. I think I called them Old Ingram in my Kentucky Bourbon Festival video. I apologize for that, but O.H. Ingram, I was pretty impressed. Hadn't had a whole lot from them, but this is one that I think you should keep an eye out for. As is number 2, which is a bottle I already have, and that is the Silk Velvet Small Batch. This is coming from the folks over at Silk Velvet, and as I mentioned, they were one of my favorite distilleries at the Kentucky Bourbon Fest, where I have the full breakdown up there on the top right of your screen. If you want to watch that at the end of this video, I'll have it linked in the description below. But Silk Velvet, an up-and-coming brand that was rebranded, or actually revived, last December. This is their second ever release. Their first one being the single barrel, which took my top pour of the 2025 Kentucky Bourbon Fest, or at least my top bourbon. The Silk Velvet Small Batch, this is slightly cheaper. That checks in at $80. This comes in with an MSRP of $49.99. This is contract distilled, or actually wasn't contract distilled. This is coming from Western Kentucky Distilling Company, from Jacob Call, who actually distilled it when he was at Green River. So it's Green River Distillate that Jacob bought and took to Western Kentucky Distilling Company. It is a blend of 6-year-old bourbons with a mash bill of 70% corn, 21% rye, and 9% malted barley, which is that general Green River mash bill, and blended with bourbons that have a 78% corn, 13% rye, and 9% malted barley mash bill, which some would think is Jim Beam, but Jacob ran that distillate at Green River as well, kind of as an honor to his dad, Ron, who ran that mash bill, I believe, when he was at Jim Beam himself. So this is a blend of all of that, right at 107 proof, and as I mentioned, $49.99. Now, this one thing is, it is Kentucky only. So if you are traveling through Kentucky, keep an eye out for that. But the good news, they just hit Sealbox, and they are now available on Sealbox for $49.99, shipped right to your door wherever Sealbox ships. If that is something that interests you, I have thrown the link in the comments or in the descriptions below if you want to check that out from Sealbox. But this would be a bottle that's not going to break your budget, that I think you are going to have a very good experience with. Speaking of good experiences, number 3 checks in another bottle that I have, and that is this new Row 94 Full Proof Bourbon. If you don't know much about Row 94, This is also coming from Green River Distilling Company, at least distilled from Green River. I didn't even realize it when I was making the list. But this is Dierks Bentley, country superstar, his own bourbon. I know a lot of people do not love celebrity brands and celebrity bourbons because they think it's a money grab. I was lucky enough to actually sit down with Dierks Bentley as they were announcing this at Green River a few weeks ago. Talk about authentic personality. He was 100% honest. He said, hey, I'm not looking here to make a buck. I'm just trying to get some good whiskey into the hands of my fans and at a good price. $55 for a full proof bourbon, when now in today's day and age, as I mentioned a little bit ago, a lot of these bottles are being released around $80 to $100 with these new releases. This one under 60 bucks at $55. Got to sit in with Dierks and listen to a bit of a concert. And if you want to see the full review on this, I will be cracking into this here later on this month. So make sure you smash that like button and hit that subscribe button below. But this again, 70% corn, 21% rye, 9% malted barley. It is a blend of 4-year-old bourbons at 120 proof. I'm a huge fan of Dierks Bentley, and it was great to meet him. Great to see that he's actually a cool dude and that he's putting out some great whiskey. His normal bourbon is 94 proof, which is the year that he moved to Nashville to start his country music career in 1994. This is full proof, and he said that this is probably his favorite of the 3 that they've released so far, but I'll leave you that to make that idea for yourself if you get a chance to try it. But for 55 bucks, it's hard to beat, and this is, I believe, the highest proof I've seen come out of Green River. That is their own whiskey that they're putting out. Number 4, another celebrity brand, and I know that you're probably at this point going, Brandon, what the are you doing? But this is a brand that I think celebrity bourbon-wise, you wouldn't, number 1, know if you didn't know who it was. Number 2, he actually puts his hands to work for this bourbon. He's helped distill, he's helped to blend. In fact, the first batch that they ever put out, he blended in his kitchen for about a year, and that is Brothers Bond. But this one is their new regenerative grain bourbon batch 2. I did get a bottle of batch 1, have yet to review that, but again, stay tuned here on the channel as I'll be reviewing several of these bottles over the next couple of weeks. But this is supposed to be regenerative grain, similar to the Maker's Mark Star Hill Farms that we reviewed here earlier on this year, up there on the top right of your screen. This is one of those where you're supposed to be letting the soil and the climate and enhancing local ecosystems by restoring soil health, and that's a farming approach. This is contract distilled from what is called Statesville Contract Distilling, which you may know or formerly remember as Southern Distilling Company, Southern Star out there into the Carolinas. This has a funky mash bill of 73% corn, 10% rye, 8% wheat, and 9% malted barley. Ian Somerhalder and Paul Wesley have been doing this brand, I think, for about 4 years now. This is a blend of 4 and I believe 6-year-old bourbons. The first batch was a 3-year-old rye bourbon and a 6-year-old wheated bourbon blend. This one is age stated at 4 years. This comes in right at $59.99. Proof point is 92. So if you're a fan of some lower proofs, this might be one to keep on your radar here as you head out throughout the month of October. But I've enjoyed the other products that I've tried from Brothers Bond. For those of you who do not touch any celebrity brands, I think this might be another one that you might want to keep an eye out for, just because this is not just a celebrity throwing his name on a brand. He literally helps distill it out there into the Carolinas, and he actually helps with the blending process and part of that as well. So Brothers Bond Regenerative Grain Batch 2 is number 4 on the list. Number 5 on the list is coming from a new distillery. It's actually not new, but it is the first ever product that they have released with their name on it. Was able to try some at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival and with one of my buddies and Patreon members, Sam, here on the Whiskey Weather YouTube channel. And that is the Jackson Purchase Full Proof Bourbon Batch number 1. This was dropped in the month of September. It is, I believe, Kentucky only. So you're only going to find it if you're traveling through Kentucky, but I do also believe that they have sold some online at times. This is a 70% corn, 20% rye, 10% mash bill. This comes in right around 117 proof, I believe, and now we are at the 4-year mark. $60, but for a craft distillery putting out their first whiskey, I will give them all the props for being patient. They are right along the Mississippi River near the Tennessee-Kentucky state line. They started in 2021. This distillery was led by 2 prominent whiskey master distillers. We're talking former master distiller of Heaven Hill, Craig Beam, and former Willet head distiller Terry Ballard. Now, most of their distillate has actually been contract distilled for the last couple of years. That's kind of how they've kept the lights on, but this is their first ever release. It does have some craft notes. It does have some Beam notes to it. It was distilled partially by a member of the Beam family. But seriously, if you are a fan of craft bourbon and whiskey that is unique and different, and not going to put a hurtin' on your wallet or your credit card statement, I think this is certainly one that is going to be right up your alley, and I think it's something that you should be keeping an eye out for the next time you're in the state of Kentucky. Now, we are halfway through the list, 5 out of the 10 so far, and I hope that you have learned about new bourbons and whiskeys, and if so, if you've gotten some value out of this video, I urge you to hit that subscribe button below. We are almost to 15,000 subscribers. As I record this, we're about 100 people away. And I have a goal of 20,000 by the end of 2025 as we're trying to take the Whiskey Weather YouTube channel to a new altitude. So if you are a fan of honest bourbon and whiskey reviews, smash that subscribe button below, and let's jump right into number 6 on my list. Number 6 on my list actually was on my list in October of last year, and batch 2 is just as good, if not better, and that is Castle & Key's Cask Strength Wheated Bourbon. That was a lot to say. This one coming in a little bit higher proof. I believe last year was like 106 proof. This year 108.2. It is still 7 years old, and that price point is between $65 and $70. Again, not terrible compared to a lot of these other releases that are coming out closer to that $100 mark for those 7+-year-old and cask strength. Again, this is coming from Castle & Key, which I know hasn't really had the greatest reputation for releases here over the last several years. But trust me, this one is absolutely worth the money. This year's 108.2 proof, as I mentioned, a little bit higher than last year, 7 years old at $70, and it's got a mash bill of 73% corn, 17% malted barley, and 10% white winter wheat, so a little bit different of a mash bill. As I mentioned, the reputation behind Castle & Key's bourbon here the last couple of years hasn't been great. I've always thought that their wheated bourbon was the best thing they put out, and their cask strength is the best version of that wheated bourbon, and honestly, I think that they're actually starting to turn a corner here over the last couple of months with some of their new bourbons, new releases. And I think if you weren't a fan of the first couple of bottles that you tried from them, give them a second chance, because I think that they are actually going to impress you this time around. So check out Castle & Key's 7-year-old wheated cask strength bourbon. Real quick, before we wrap up this video, let's talk about something we have all dealt with before: hangovers. If you're a fan of bourbon, I'm going to venture a guess you've woken up with a rough morning or two. I know I've had a lot more than I care to admit. Until recently, because of these lifesavers right here. I present you Hang Light Gummies. They're packed with stuff like DHM and milk thistle, which help your body bounce back quicker after a night full of drinking to give yourself better mornings and days after. These are all natural ingredients, no chemicals, that support liver health as well as limit that brain fog the next day. Not gonna lie, ever since I have gotten these, I have not woken up once with a hangover, no headaches, no grogginess, just a little bit tired because I didn't get to bed at the right time. If you did want to give these a try, there is a 10% off code in the link in the description below. Just use code Brandon10. That'll get you that 10% off. Now let's get back to talking about bourbon. Number 7 on my list is a name you hear a lot of when I make these bourbon and whiskey lists, and that is Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, but this one is a rye. Yes, you heard that right. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Rye, batch A925. We finally have a barrel proof rye version from Elijah Craig, as this one checks in at 12 years, 3 months. It is an MSRP that is affordable, just like the bourbon, at $74.99, pretty much $75. 108 proof. I was able to already try this from my buddy Ajay, who picked one up at the distillery last week. It did technically get released in the month of September, but we should start to see more and more of these reaching store shelves throughout the month of October as distribution picks up. Now, on my list, I usually include the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Bourbon batch. However, this month, not going to be the case because it is a 9-year-old age statement. And if I had to pick, I would be spending my money on the rye rather than the bourbon, just for a value purposes, but also because when I tried the rye, I was very impressed. And that's saying something, because I'm a huge Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Bourbon snob, especially when it comes to the C batches. Just not too excited about the 9-year age statement when for years it was 12 years old. Speaking of years, the next bourbon on my list is the oldest bourbon this distillery has ever released. It is a craft bourbon out of Texas, and it made my list back in the month of July. for their red corn. This time, this is their regular bottle and bond bourbon, but this is a 7-year-old bottle and bond bourbon coming from the folks over at Still Austin. As I mentioned, the oldest release yet. This is 7 years old, 100 proof, and right at $80 for that MSRP. This does have a mash bill of 70% corn, 25% rye, and 10% malted barley. I've been a big fan of what Still Austin has been putting out here the last couple of years when it comes to the Tanager, when it comes to the red corn bourbon and that blue corn bourbon, which I believe is going to be released later on this year. But if you are a fan of what Still Austin is doing, number 8 on the list is their 7-year-old bottle and bond bourbon. Now, number 9 is when we start to get to more of those legacy, high-priced bottles. In fact, the first 8 on my list were all $80 or under. This one's going to jump way past that $100 mark. In fact, it's all the way to the $250 mark, and that is Knob Creek 21. I know that technically it released in most markets in the month of September, so don't jump on me, but we're going to start to see wider distribution here throughout the month of October. Again, 21 years old. This is also going to be proofed right at 100, just like all the other Knob Creek age-stated bourbons like the 12, 15, 18, and even the 9-year-old. 75% corn, 13% rye, 12% malted barley for the mash bill. I love the 12-year-old bourbon. The 18's pretty good as well. Now for the price, the 21-year, if you're a collector of Knob Creek, this is certainly going to be one that you want to watch for. If you just love high age-dated bourbon, and at $250, that is close to the $10 per year age statement that I'm usually looking forward to. But I do know that $250 is not necessarily in everybody's budget. But if you can swing it, it is certainly something worth keeping an eye out for, as is number 10 on my list. The most expensive and probably the most sought-after bottle on the list, if we're going to be honest. And that is the 2025 release of King of Kentucky. They call it King for a reason, folks. 17 years old, 127 proof this year, but the one change, the MSRP this year, bumped up from $350 to $400. As I mentioned, the most expensive bottle on my list. This has a mash bill of 79% corn, 11% rye, and 10% malted barley, and it comes from Brown-Forman's Warehouse J, 4th floor, and the 1st floor of Warehouse G. 5,000 bottles of it this year, which is supposed to be the most that has ever been produced, meaning it might be slightly easier to find this year, which is still pretty doubtful. Of course, it is one of those ultimate unicorn bottles year after year that you're more likely to find at secondary pricing if you see it at all, but fingers crossed that this is the year that you're able to find it at MSRP. That will cap off my list of 10 bottles to keep an eye out for here in the month of October. However, I do have a handful of honorable mentions that didn't make my list because of either, I'm not sure that's going to be released here in the month of October, they're distillery only, or it's just not something that really popped up on my radar or something that I would definitely be spending my money on, so I didn't think that it would be something that you should. Number 1 is the Little Book, The Infinite number 2, which I believe they had an issue with labeling back in August, so they were supposed to release in September, didn't get there, and I'm not 100% sure it's going to be hitting store shelves here in the month of October, but should by the end of the year. Number 2, the Yellowstone Small Batch Recollection Series, which is a distillery-only bottle. Beautiful bottle. It tastes great, but I believe you can only get it there at Yellowstone or at Lux Row. And then the third one on my list is the Woodford's Distillery Reserve Barrel Strength Rye. It's good, just not necessarily something that I'd be shelling out a bunch of my money for, so I didn't think that it was appropriate to put on this list. And then, of course, there are 2 exclusive single barrels that I will be dropping, which we'll get to here in a second. Hope you were able to get a lot of value and learn about some new bourbons and whiskeys here in this video, and if so, make sure to hit that subscribe button below so you don't miss out on some more future videos and some bourbon and whiskey reviews. As I mentioned, I am releasing 2 single barrels here in the month of October, a 14-year-old Indiana rye coming from River Roots. So it's coming from MG Peef. And that second barrel is from Middle West Spirits. It is a cask strength pumpernickel rye, super unique and different, but also a perfect fall pour in my opinion. So if either of those tickle your fancy, you're gonna wanna join the Storm Chaser Network below, which is what I call my YouTube as well as Patreon membership programs. They get first access to all barrel picks. They get some exclusive content. They get first access to some of my videos, as well as some other membership perks. And I've got some amazing Patreon and YouTube members, as you see scrolling there on the right side of your screen. But they, as I mentioned, get first access to those barrel picks and future barrel picks as well. As I did mention just a few seconds ago, I am on the hunt for the best bourbon and whiskey of 2025. I did just review one of my favorites so far this year, and that is the Penelope 13-year-old Founders Reserve Bourbon. So if you like this video, you're gonna like that review as well, and you gotta check out to see whether or not it made my top list for bourbon and whiskey of the year. I'll end this the same way I end every other video. Please remember to drink responsibly, but it is always whiskey weather, and we'll see you in that Penelope 13 review. Cheers, y'all.